Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Your Life, Your Story, Rise Up. I'm your host, Jill O'Boyle, and I am so excited about today's episode. I have a guest joining me today. Her name is Sabrina Victoria. She's an entrepreneur at heart. She is the CEO of Human Better 365 and the founder of Her Nation. She is dedicated to giving people the tools they need to rise mentally, emotionally, financially, physically, in order to find real wealth in their lives. I'm so excited to dive into the topic today. So Sabrina, thank you so much for joining me.
Yes, girl. So super excited to hang out with you.
I love it. I love it. You know, my tagline is be you, love life, and rise up. So when I saw that in your bio, I was like, rise up, girl. Let's do it. We're going to help women rise up today, or anybody really listening today. So super excited. So we got connected. I know we've talked a little bit, but I remember before we got connected, before I was reading through your testimony, your story, your bio, there were so many things in there that just jumped off the page at me that was so just compelling that I can't wait to dive in today for our listeners. But the one line that I read, it actually made me smile and it made me chuckle. And it said, basically in short, right? So I'm reading Sabrina's bio and it says, basically in short, she specializes in, She specializes in creating absolute masterpieces out of complete chaos. And I was like, yes. Because I mean, I read your bio. I can see that you've turned so many things in your life around and now you're helping other people. But I wish I had my pajama shirt on that I actually had on this morning, because I have a t-shirt that says chaos coordinator. And
yes.
And I actually slept in that last night and I was like, I should have left that on for the podcast. So when it's on YouTube, I should have had it on. But that's what I have said my whole life. I'm like, literally, this is what I do for a living. I am a chaos coordinator. My background was in project management, event management. I just managed a lot of chaos. And so my husband made it official a couple of years ago and he actually got me that t-shirt and I'm like, I will wear this proudly. And say it.
Yes. Yeah. I feel like I thrive in situations like that. I don't know. My brain works like that, which it sounds like yours does too, where you can just like, it's kind of like a puzzle. Like I already know what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
When the whole thing's figured out. That's so cool.
Yeah.
High five.
Yep. High five, girl. So yeah. And women in general, we just do, we juggle a lot of things. And so we can joke about it and we can laugh about it, but it is true. But part of that, when you were talking about chaos in your story, like there's a lot of things going on there. And the one thing I felt like when I read through all your things, which we're going to get into, and I know you're going to share your story, but the one word that I said, like kind of just popped off the page to me as I was reading, I'm like, this girl has resilience. Like you're a fighter and you're going to continue to get back up. And so that's what I love to share on this podcast is women who have found themselves in some kind of battle through life, right? Because we all have issues. We all have things that we go through. But it's in those moments of taking that battle and turning it into a breakthrough and realizing, like, I think it's when you can look back at the dots and realize like everything was happening for you. And maybe not in the moment, you can't see that, but is a breakthrough coming. And so for the women that are listening today, if you're in that moment and you're feeling just completely in the pits, like keep listening, because Sabrina's story will, I think, really inspire you of how you can be resilient in those storms and really get through and reach massive success that like you have. So maybe we just start there and just share a little bit, Sabrina, about your story. And then I want to really kind of hone into that resilient word. And maybe you can give some tools and strategies to help some of the women that may be listening as well.
Yeah, 100%. So I was actually raised as a Jehovah's Witness, which a lot of people don't know. And it's a fairly strict religion. I wound up getting pregnant at the age of 20 with no husband. And I always say emphasis on the no husband part, because that was the pivot in my life. Because of that sin, I was not married. My entire family, my entire community, everyone who I knew just dropped me like a hot potato.
Wow.
Cut off all communication. And I led this stereotypical single mom, just broke life, like the stuff that you hear about in the movies. Just literally no money, like digging in the couch cushions for 25 cents to put gas in my car, type of broke. Eviction notices on my apartment door every other month, having to choose between driving to the grocery store or walking to the grocery store because I couldn't afford food and gas.
Yeah.
So, just a really dark place, a lot of despair, a lot of unworthiness, a lot of living in a dark sin, suicidal thoughts, and of course, postpartum. And then not knowing
Right.
it was postpartum because I didn't have anyone to ask. So just feeling like the shittiest mom on the face of the
Yeah.
planet. Speaking of moms, I know a lot of your listeners are women or moms. And for those of you that have dealt with postpartum, you know how that feels. It's like you got so many just ridiculous thoughts going through your head. But
Yeah.
at least a lot of us know what postpartum is.
Mhm.
And there's also some sort of support system sometimes. So I had neither. So
Right.
I'm
You're
just
just
walking
out there on
around
your
like,
own.
I am a psychopath mother. I can't even believe I have a child right now.
Well, and especially as a new mom, because the world tells you, oh, just wait for your bundle of joy and all these things. And although you may feel that, on the other side, you feel completely different, and it's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So I did that for about a year and a half. I have no idea how I did it for real. But then I met a man, and this was my second pivot. I met a man. I thought he was given to me by God. So I was
Mm,
praying and praying for somebody to help me, somebody to save me. And he had money. And that's what I needed was money. So I'm
yeah.
like, oh my gosh, he's given to me by God. And I ignored all the red flags. And girl, there was so many red flags stapled to this man's body. Like immediately. People ask, like, what did you realize? Literally day one.
Oh, wow.
Like literally day one. There was so many red flags immediately, and I just ignored all of them. I was just so desperate for attention,
Mhm.
so desperate for affection that I just ignored everything. And I fell hook, line, and sinker for all the things. It's a very long story, but long story short, within a very short amount of time, he convinced me to leave my place because I couldn't afford it anyways and move in with him. And then
Mhm.
he convinced me to quit my job because it was a shitty job anyways and start working for him. So right there, right off the bat, two means of power, right? Having my own place and making my own money
Yeah.
were stripped from me. I didn't know that this is what was happening. They were presented to me as gifts. Like, let me help you.
Right.
And what happened is just, I couldn't afford anything. He was paying me $250 a week. I
Mhm.
was working 14 to 16 hours a day for him, plus keeping house. So I was like low key, like a servant basically. And I still not making my bills,
Yeah.
$250 a week. Daycare itself is
Right.
$100 a week or more. And then my phone, and then my car, and then my insurance and my gas. I mean, I still wasn't able to live. So
Yeah.
he eventually took over my phone. He eventually took over my car, right? Power, power, power.
Control.
8 years in, I turn around. I'm working 14 to 16 hours. I have no money in my bank account. Mental abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, obviously financial abuse, um, no voice, no confidence, no self-esteem, just working, working, working like a dog.
Yeah.
And I find myself on the floor one day, just
Mhm.
having a total mental breakdown. The kind where you're like on the floor crying and screaming at the same time because like crying isn't enough.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just felt like life was just pouring out of me. And I'll never forget the day I took out my phone and I'm in the dark, literally just crying. And I have this bright screen in front of my eyes. I can barely see the screen because it's like dark and I'm crying. And I Google, why is my boyfriend bullying me? Because I didn't know any other vernacular other than the word bully.
Yeah.
And the entire world of narcissism, codependency, empathy, no voice, lack of confidence, no financial fortitude just hit me right in the face. Personal development, basically.
Mm.
And I recognized two things that day. I recognized one, there was a shit ton wrong with my partner. Two, there was a shit ton wrong with me.
Mm.
And when you find something out like that, you can go in two different arenas. So for those of you listening who have been through something like this, you can go down the path of like educating your partner and trying to figure out your partner and getting group therapy and counseling and trying to explain things to him and the woe is me and victimhood and blamehood and all the things him,
Yep.
or you can take a different route and you can go into the route of how can I fix me?
Uh-huh.
And luckily, like looking back, luckily I didn't know at the time, but luckily I spent very little time trying to fix him. And I spent a ton of time trying to fix me. I dove headfirst into personal development. Very, very soon after that, I opened up a secret bank account, a secret storage unit. I started 3 online secret businesses. And over the course of a couple of years, I collected $50,000, which does not seem like a lot of money, but I felt like a
Oh,
millionaire.
yeah.
And I literally escaped one day. I took my son, our clothes, and my bicycle. That's all I took. I left everything else behind. And I ran away. I started all over again with a mattress on the floor.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that and being very open and transparent and vulnerable about that. I can only imagine the thoughts. There were so many things that you said there. The thoughts in that moment of, because you're right, so many times you can take 2 different approaches. And I think many times the easier approach from some people is it's external, right? It's never
Yeah.
internal. It's I'm going to focus on them. And if I can fix them, then my life will be better. I'm guilty of that myself through my own journey and my own story. My fingers pointed outward in why my marriage wasn't working and why I was doing the things that I was doing. And it was until finally, like the light bulb moment of finding clarity and stillness in God and realizing like, whoa, 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 there could be some of that, but you got to go inward first, Jill. Look at your own story. And I love that you found that and you really didn't spend too much time in fixing him. Like you've already had realized, I mean, what'd you say? 8 years.
8 years.
That's a long time. And you already knew day one. So like
Yeah.
that, feeling of just holding that in for so long. But also like the persistence and resilience and doing that, taking that, your son and everything that you had with you and just walking out of that, knowing his behavior of control. I speak a lot about fear. Can you talk to me a little bit about that? Because there had to been a huge fear that was present. And I'm sure the enemy got in your head and said, well, there's security here, Sabrina. Remember, you don't have anything. How
Yeah.
did you navigate through
Girl.
that?
I mean, for real. For those that have been in a situation like this or any sort of abusive relationship, whether it's where I was at or you're like getting physically, like I was never physically hit, right? There's so many different levels of abuse and interpersonal abuse that happens within households, whether it's just verbal or it's like throwing things or hitting.
Mhm.
There's so many different levels. But I had tried to leave several times. I had even moved out a couple of times and I always wound up back in. And there's always this story of like, how could you go back? Or why did you stay? And if it was really that bad, why would you?
Yeah.
And there's a whole reason, right? There's a whole like lineage of just mental stuff that we could get into and just the characteristics of an individual who has high narcissistic traits, what they do. Um, but my mental state of mind was weak. I
Mhm.
mean, it was really, really weak. So how I did eventually, like for sure, cut it off and I left is there was a point in my story where I realized I had to be smarter than myself,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Like there's two things. It's kind of like when you're on a diet and it's like you're not supposed to eat the thing, like but
Yeah.
then you like still eat the thing.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with this. It's like, you're not supposed to be with the person, but then you're like still with the person.
Mhm.
So you have to like trick yourself. And I knew this wasn't the life I didn't want to live. I was not supposed to be here. I talk a lot about like a light or a gut feeling.
Yep.
I knew that this was not my story. So there was a point where I was like, I have to be smarter than myself. So what I started to do was create not a plan to leave. When I talk about saving my money and I saved that 50 grand,
Yeah.
I was not saving that money to leave. That's the story that I tell, but I was not, to be completely honest. I
Yeah.
was saving that money so that I could if I wanted to.
Mhm.
It was for the freedom. It was for
Right.
the for
Yes.
the choice
For
of being
I love
able
that.
to. So when I was saving that money, it wasn't this is my money to leave. It was, this is my money. So I have a choice when that situation comes to bay. And
Yes.
I almost just made it foolproof. So I started saving the money in this little secret bank account. And over the course of like saving more, my confidence got higher. And I started to
Mhm.
feel more power, and I started to feel more just confident in myself and my own abilities to be able to like make a life for myself and create money for myself. And I wasn't even working a job. Like
Yeah.
imagine also working a job and also doing these side hustles. So I leaned on like the what if.
Mhm.
What if I did save money? One of the things that my ex used to say to me all the time is whoever has all the money has all the power.
Mm.
Whoever makes all the money makes all the rules. And he
Yep.
used to say this to me all the time. Hey, do you have any
Wow.
money? Then you have no power and you make no rules. Like
Wow.
that was for real.
Wow.
But what happened one day, probably over the course of a couple of months, he said it to me. And I thought to myself, he didn't say he has all the money. He said, whoever.
Mm. I love the
And I
spin on
got this
that.
thought. I'm like, wait a minute, whoever. Does that mean if I have money, I can have power?
Right.
I don't know. Let's do an experiment and find out.
Yeah. Right. Let's
So,
have some fun with this.
so I just started to save money. And girl, I was so scared. When I talk about leaving my ending, right? There's the story is so long that you can't tell all
Oh,
the
yeah.
intricacies of the story. But for real talk, girl, I didn't leave like that.
Mhm.
I did not leave like I just picked up my son one day and
Right.
then walked out with my clothes. That's not how it went. Actually, I got an apartment 3 months. I had an apartment for 3 months paid for, and
Wow.
I was still living with him. He had
Yeah.
no idea
No idea.
how scared I was.
Yeah.
I had all of my stuff in my apartment, and I
Mhm.
was still living with him. And the
Wow.
reason I left, this is how I left. One day, so a year before I actually left, because it took me a
Mhm.
few years to do this. A year before I actually left, got into a huge argument with him, which we happened every single day.
Yeah.
But I had like a plan, right? I'm like, I got to be smarter myself. This whole commotion happened in our bedroom. And I knew I had to get out of our bedroom and I had to get into the spare bedroom. So I used this huge blowout argument that we had to say, you know what? I'm no longer freaking sleeping in this room anymore. You're
Yeah.
fucking toxic. I can't
Yeah.
even function as an individual. I need my own safe haven if you want this to work. And he actually went for it, which was really weird. So I moved all of my stuff into the spare room, which he
Mm.
never went into,
Went
which was
into.
really weird. Um,
Mm.
but what I was able to do is because he never went in there. I mean, I was just hoping he never went in there. I started to take my
Sig
stuff out,
little.
put it into
Yeah.
my apartment. He didn't know because he never went in there. But then one day, a year into this, I already had my apartment. He was running the freaking RoboVac.
Oh,
And
no.
he opened up all the doors of the house. So the RoboVac, he had just bought it. He calls me up. I'm at the Container Store. I'll never forget. I'm at the Container Store, just walking around, buying stuff for our office because we work together. I'm like
Mhm.
looking for stuff to organize our office. And he gets up, he's like, what the fuck are you doing? And I was like, I knew right away.
That had to
He's
be
like,
a
you
pit in the
get
stomach
home.
feeling.
He's like, you get home right now. I just went into your room. I'm running the freaking RoboVac. I open up the closet. There's one dress in there. I opened up all your drawers. There's no clothes in your drawers. Where are you going? What is going
Mm.
on?
Oh,
Get
wow.
home right now. Like he's my dad.
Right.
And I just started laughing because I was set, girl. I was
Yeah.
set. And that is how I left, is because of
Wow.
him. If who knows how long it would have took if he wouldn't have like shoved me out basically.
Right.
I don't even know how long I would have lasted.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, so I went to the house and literally all I had to do was grab my one dress and like my toothbrush.
Yeah. And you're like,
And
done.
that was how I moved out.
Yeah. Wow, that is a powerful story. And I love what you said on in that moment when you were in despair and how you really, overcome that fear was really the choice of what ifs, right? And the choice of not having that $50,000 to live on, but hey, I have this, and it's a choice to live a life of freedom and fulfillment versus living this. And what do I want to choose? That's that's incredible.
Yeah.
Um,
But
and
lots of
and
fear. Lots of fear.
lots of fear. But then
Yeah.
the second part that's really compelling is it took, you said, I don't know how much longer I would have stayed if it wasn't until you were making those plans, but it sometimes it takes those big,
Yeah.
bold, very scary moves.
Yeah.
And you just got to trust, and it's got to be a big thing and a bold thing, and you just got to take the step towards it. And that opened the door, right? It was bound to happen sometime, but sometimes it's just, when's the moment going to be?
Yeah.
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 Well, it sounded like to Sabrina, and I think you coach your women on this too, but through that journey that you were on, and especially those words, like words stick, right, with people. And it's, you turned his words around and realized, oh, the person with money is the person of power. And oh, why can that not be me?
Yeah.
If the person with money does have power, why can that not be me? And you kind of flip that around. And I thought I talk a lot about mindset, but almost like when words like that hit you so hard and you're in relationships like that where it's so controlling, um, you tend to lose your own voice. You tend to lose your own authentic self. I know in my years of burnout and just in my relationship, we have a healthy marriage now, but I found myself there as well. Like my number one strength is communication. Like on all the strength finders, all the disc, all the things, like communication is number one. And I got to a point in my life where I was like, why am I in certain situations, why am I not showing up as my authentic self? Why do I keep muting my voice? And so I know that that's something that you help women to build their confidence, to find their voice and express themselves. And just hearing that story, I was going to ask you earlier about that, but now because usually there's a story there of why that's so passionate for you now. But is there something that you share with your women of like some tools and tips to really be their true selves and find their voice?
I mean, a lot of it is just checking in and, and it's one thing that you have to, it's not a overnight thing. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like, it's a constant thing that you have to constantly remind yourself of. And a lot of it is checking in with myself while it's happening, right? Like if I'm
Mhm.
in a situation and I'm like, I don't even want to freaking be here.
Yeah.
Right? Having that actual honest conversation with yourself and then making a mental note, like next time something like this comes up, I need to like set some sort of precedent of, hey, there's an hour limit to this, or I'm not doing it at all, or it needs
Right.
to look different, or I need to bring snacks or whatever it
Yeah.
is. Making it so that it is conducive to who you are, and then checking in beforehand, right?
Mhm.
Before one of the things that my fiance would when we first started dating, I would do these long pauses. He would ask me a question and I would pause for
Yeah.
like a ridiculous amount of time, like 10 or 20 seconds, where he'd be like, hello.
Are you
Right?
still there?
But it was me because I'm learning, right? Like I was a couple years out of the romantic relationship and I had to like check in
Mhm.
and be like, do I actually want to do this or don't I?
Yeah,
And why am I doing it? Am I doing it for me? Am I doing it for him? Do I not want an argument? Am I trying to avoid something? And that all takes a second.
it
One of the
does.
things that I tell people is when somebody requires a response from you, unless it's a freaking emergency, but if
Mhm.
somebody requires a response from you, you are under no obligation to respond
No.
within any amount of time.
Yes.
You can literally take as long as you want to respond. Like that is your right as a person. Now, will the person get mad at you? Like if they're at the grocery store and they're trying to figure out if you want raisin bread or cinnamon bread and you take forever to answer. I mean, that's a whole nother situation. But like in real life, that person does not have to respond to you.
Right.
It's not a thing. So really allowing yourself to be okay and say, "Hey, I don't have to respond to this question or this invitation
Mhm.
right now. I
Yeah.
can hang on, I can think about it, and I can respond later after I've really checked in to see where my energy level is gonna be, and do I actually wanna do that thing?
Yeah.
So,
No,
that's a
it
conti I mean, you know.
yeah, it's I I laugh because I do that myself. I call it the power of the pause, and
Mm,
it's really a smart thing to do because I know in my younger years, I have put my foot in my mouth too many times
yeah,
and wanted to react versus respond. And so it is okay to just pause for a minute and wait. And I am a processor thinker. And so sometimes I do get a little overwhelmed when I get a lot of questions and I'm like, I'll have to pause. And it's not because I'm trying to be a jerk, right? And just keep you waiting. But internally, I want to make sure that I'm understanding you. I heard what you said, and then I want to respond in a way that's correct. So yeah,
yeah.
that's
I
great.
tell I tell this story all the time, of a situation with my fiance and I where we were leaving the house and we both used hydro flasks where we fill them up with water, and my hydro flask was full and his was on the counter, and he goes, "Hey, can you fill up my hydro flask?" And this sounds so silly, but this is real life, right?
Mm-hmm.
I paused, I looked at his hydro flask, I looked at him, I looked back at the hydro flask, and I said, "No."
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't say anything. I could feel, but he didn't say anything. And he went, whatever he was doing, he filled up his hydro flask. We got in the car and
Good for you.
he goes, "I would have filled up your hydro flask." A little passive aggressive behavior. It's like, "I would have filled up
Mm-hmm.
your hydro flask." And I go, "I'm sure you would have."
Yeah.
And I did the dishes, I did the laundry, I cleaned the bathroom, I made our bed, I had 2
Mm-hmm.
calls, like whatever. I said a bunch of stuff. And I go, "You have way more energy than I did at that moment
Yep.
because I was doing all that stuff." I'm like, simple things like that is what causes bitterness
It does.
between couples because you take it just
Mm,
past where you're exerting energy past where you're capable of it. And then I'm pissed off
yeah.
because I this and 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 this. And then you have the audacity to ask me to also fill up your hydro flask. Why didn't you get ready 2 minutes earlier so that you can fill up your own hydro flask? Like,
Mm-hmm.
how was I able to do all? So I said, what that allows me to do is to not vomit all that I just said right now, right? All over you
And just say no.
like a psycho person. It allows me to say, "Hey, listen, I don't have the energy to do that. So you have to handle that."
Yeah.
And it's conversations like that ongoing throughout relationships is what has really helped us gauge each other with the amount of energy that we are spewing out into the world to
Yeah.
human, you know?
No, that's so good because what that is it's a matter of boundaries, right? You're saying yes to things that you have capacity and energy for, and you're saying no to the things that you don't. And you're also the other thing is boundaries and then communication. And
Yeah.
have learned through my very expensive lessons of my own mistakes in my areas of people pleasing that just surrounds my being that I had to pay a high cost for that of saying yes to everything that people asked of me. And because of that, right, I set no boundaries and I communicated no boundaries. And it paid a high price for my own well-being. And so I love that. And no is a complete sentence, right? Like just no. And like you said, you preface it like this may seem little, but it's those little things like you were just saying that if you don't put an end to it, it will explode.
Yeah.
And that's where
Yeah.
I found myself all the time. I would
Yeah.
just push stuff down all the time and I just take it on, take it on, take it on, take it on. And then there you go. There comes firecracker Jill with one little thing. And my husband's like, or anybody, friend or whoever, mom, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, well, let me tell you, I haven't spoke up in about 6 months, but this little thing's been driving me
Yeah.
nuts. So
Totally. And that's what
yeah.
happens, sometimes when husbands or wives, when
Yeah.
one little thing where it's like, "Dude, all I did was ask you to fill up a hydro flask." but it's all the stuff, right? So when
Yeah.
you start to check in with yourself and you start saying no to things, it alleviates those blowouts
Yeah.
because you're reminding yourself that you are in control and you don't have to do all those things. So me
Mhm.
saying no to little things like that is me is me not having to blow up like that anymore because
Yeah.
I'm noticing I'm at a limit and then I'm done.
Yeah.
And then I don't do anything else
Yeah.
because I know I can feel it that it's
Mhm.
just nothing. So then the blowups don't happen,
Right.
right? Because then I refill up and then we start over again
Over.
and it's no
Yeah.
big deal. But you have to see where that trigger is for yourself so that you don't get to the point. The amount of blowups that I have is like, I don't even freaking remember
Yeah.
anymore. I don't even remember when the last time it was because I'm constantly checking in with myself.
Yeah. That's awesome. So let's fast forward. So we have heard your past. We've saw where the things that you have went through. And now here we are today. You're a very successful entrepreneur. So you are the CEO of Human Better 365, the founder of Her Nation, the creator of Sober Society. You're the host of her talk show, many more other things. So as we close out and we talk about, I want to come back to that resilience because I know there's a lot of listeners that are in, um, corporate America, working moms, me myself, right? As a new entrepreneur that has been, I have my dog just wanting to we have a new puppy. So hi, hi,
Love
hi.
it.
So as a new entrepreneur myself, like I find, whether you're in corporate America, working mom, new entrepreneur, I mean, for me, I have to have a lot of resilience right now because there's a real live voice that comes in our head that says we're not good enough, that says that we should just give up, says we should just forget about our authentic self. Let's just play in the sandbox. Let's just do the 9 to 5, right? All the things. So, I mean, I just listed off a bunch of things that you have completed, and you went from on the floor and in your closet
Yeah.
with nothing, right? Having eviction notice, single mom, to where you are today. I mean,
Yeah.
that takes resilience, it takes courage, it takes probably a whole lot of faith. Um, so if you could give the listeners listen today, whether they're a working mom, corporate mom, new entrepreneur, even been an entrepreneur for a while, but are still struggling with this, inner critic, self-doubt. What are 3 things maybe that you would say that have really in your journey have kept you just continuously to fight for what you're worth?
Yeah. Um, I could say 3 things, but I'm not going to. I'm going to give one story
I love it.
that should be about the same amount of time.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know who here or if you yourself, Jill, have done any work within inner child work. I'm a huge believer in inner
Hmm.
child work. I think that
Same.
it has absolutely saved my life. So years ago, I should probably figure out when, but years ago, I dove into the world of inner children. I believe that we are as humans we have inside of us every year we've ever been. So I believe that I have a 1-year-old, a 2-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 16-year-old, a 29-year-old, a 34-year-old, a 39-year-old inside of me,
Hmm.
right? 40 Sabrina or 39
Yeah.
Sabrinas inside of me. And every single one of those Sabrinas lived for 1 year. And during that 1 year, some of them had very tough years,
Hmm.
suicidal years, wanting to get wasted and numb myself years, wanting to become a drug addict years, wanting to throw my baby at a fire station years, right?
Mm. Yes.
And that Sabrina was in charge. She showed up and she did the best that she could in that year.
Yep.
The girl, the Sabrina that wanted to commit suicide, didn't think she could do it anymore. She got up.
Yeah.
And she got up with vigor. She got up with positivity. She got up with a smile on her face and she freaking lived out her year. And she did the best that she could with the knowledge that she had, knowing that there was something inside. There was a light, there was a gut feeling inside of her that said, I just have to get through this year. And I know that Sabrina has big things waiting for her. I just have to get her to the next year.
Yeah.
And then that next Sabrina took the baton and she's like, girl, we're going to get through this year and we're going to keep learning and we're going to keep educating and we're going to keep thrashing through this thing called life.
Yeah.
And where I am right now as a 40-year-old woman is a leader, is a role model to all of those other Sabrinas. And I have a duty, I have an obligation to make sure that I fulfill that light and that gut feeling that every single one of them felt.
Yeah.
The reason that they didn't give up, the reason that they didn't just fall into like, this is my life, and I guess this is my life of victimhood and blamehood, is so that one day they knew that there was something, they didn't know what it was, but they just had faith that there was something that I was supposed to be doing that was greater than what they were doing.
Yeah.
So now I am here and I'm 40 years old and I have a vision beyond anything that I could possibly actually get done in my lifetime. And I owe it to them. I owe it to every single one of those Sabrinas who showed up fully in the best way that they could for me.
Yeah.
And I have them to thank for it. And I have them to pay it back, to pay it forward. And that's what I plan absolutely to do. And that's what keeps me going. That's what keeps the fire. That's what keeps the positivity. That's what keeps the momentum, is just checking in, being like, girls, I got you. I got you. We're doing this. And not only is it now Sabrina's, right? But now my entire community, her nation, and all of their inner children are sitting here, walking forward brilliantly, strong and powerfully for each other to make change, make impact in our own lineage, in our own communities.
Wow. That is beautifully said. It gave chills over my body, brought tears to my eyes, and I asked the question to give it, to the world, but it's there was something there that you gave to me, Sabrina. So thank you. Like, I needed to hear those words of encouragement and light, and thank you for not giving up.
Thank you.
Thank you for showing up for all the Sabrinas, all those childhood things that you went through, and continue to show up and fight, because the women in this world, the people in this world, the men, women, everyone that is following your journey, hearing this story, you're changing lives and you're impacting lives. And that, I don't know about you, but that's why I do what I do too, is that if I can change one person's life, I've done something in this life that's super impactful. So, you're a blessing. And I am so thankful that God brought me to you. I never believe in coincidences, and I knew we were supposed to talk for a reason. And you just gave me the words of encouragement that it's been a heavy week for me this week. So thank you. And it's only Tuesday. So it's been a minute yesterday was a whirlwind. So thank you so much.
Yes.
All right.
And girl, we got this,
we
can do hard things.
We can do hard things. We're chaos coordinators, y'all, we got it. All right. So I want to end with one last question, selfishly, because I always love to learn and grow, but that way all the other people listening can also hear. What is something that you are reading or listening to, whether it's a book, a podcast, a show that you're watching, that you just think we need to all know about?
The book that I just finished was The Slight Edge. Oh, I don't know who it's by, but it is all about productivity.
Yay.
And it's all about the slight edge. So what is the difference between person A and person B, and the success that they have? And it's that person B did just slightly more, just the slight edge more than person A. And it's doing that little slightly more, slightly different, slightly pivoting is what causes people to rocket forward in their business, in their life in general.
That's so good.
I think it's Jim Olsen. Olsen, I think.
Jim Olsen, writing it down. Awesome. You know, I'm all about productivity habits and time management. So I'll
Yeah.
check that out. That sounds awesome. And it's right. It's so true, right? It's just like taking that just one next step further, right? And I'm excited to dive into that book. That sounds awesome. Well, thank you. Where can the listeners learn more about you? Where can they find you? Where do you hang out the most?
Yeah. So my website is the easiest, sabrinavictoria.com. And that
Okay,
has everything. It has all the communities I run. It has all of my social media that I run. I always recommend people to jump in, drop into my DMs and ask to get on a call. I'm at the point in my business right now where I'm available. I'm
good.
open and I'm talking and I'm networking and I'm collaborating with so many individuals. And I'm 100% interested in getting on the phone with anybody who wants to share with me, get on a podcast with me, share their story with me, ask for some pointers.
Yeah.
I'm an open vessel right now to giving back to the community.
I love that. I love that. Well, I'll share those links in the show notes below. And yes, all of you that are listening, I think you can tell already by the podcast, like Sabrina is just a light in this world and she's just open. I can tell you're a connector, love helping others to, just like me, rise up, right, in all areas of your life. So definitely give her a follow and send her a DM. Tell her that you found her by listening to this podcast. Because that's what we love to do, is just help others and get connected with other people. So thank you so much for being here with me today. I truly enjoyed it.
Yes, thank you.